We all know the big hitters like Call of Duty, Valorant, Counter-Strike 2, whatever, but the first-person shooter genre is absolutely massive, and honestly, some of the most creative and exciting experiences fall through the cracks every single year. So today, I want to shine a light on 15 amazing FPS games that, for one reason or another, you might have completely overlooked. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. So first on the list is Immortals of Aveum, which is honestly just a super solid shooter that a lot of people either ignored or completely missed when it dropped. It seems like some folks just rolled their eyes at the whole vibe, from the world building to how the characters looked. This was actually a massive project from a team that unfortunately didn't see it take off, but they had some seriously seasoned talent from the Call of Duty world behind the scenes, and you can definitely feel that expertise, not because it's some cheap clone or anything, but because it's this incredibly unique experience where you're basically a wizard instead of a soldier with a rifle. I mean, just picture the pure chaos and destruction of a classic Call of Duty campaign, but swap the guns for magic. You've got these wild, over-the-top moments and different types of firepower where you're tossing grenades and leveling things, only it's all set in a fantasy land with spells shooting out of your hands like something straight out of BioShock. Honestly, the gameplay feels so distinct once you actually get into the rhythm of it, and the fact that it's this high-budget cinematic journey really makes it worth checking out, in my opinion. It's not a perfect game, that's for sure, especially since some of the writing and acting can feel a bit clunky, but it's still incredibly satisfying to play. Plus, there are some genuinely awesome action sequences here that you really shouldn't sleep on. Next up on the list, we've got Mullet MadJack. Now, if this isn't on your radar yet, just imagine what would happen if a 90s anime got tossed into a high-speed blender with a heavy dose of synthwave obsession. It's this wild roguelike shooter where you're basically living on a 10-second countdown, meaning you're constantly staring at a death timer unless you keep smashing robots to buy yourself more time. The pace is just relentless, like blink and it's game over fast. And the whole aesthetic feels like a neon-drenched fever dream pulled straight from a dusty VHS tape you'd find in an attic. You're basically tearing through these procedurally generated levels in this massive tower, where the objective is pretty much just to keep moving or literally explode, I guess. To be fair, that sharp, old-school visual style is probably what's going to grab your attention first, but it's definitely the core gameplay loop that ends up hooking you. It has that classic just one more try vibe because you're always grabbing new perks and gear that make you feel totally invincible for a few seconds before a bot clears your clock. You can really feel the heart a small Brazilian team poured into this, especially with how authentic it feels to that era of over-the-top, hyper-violent animation. And personally, I think it's one of the most refreshing FPS titles we've seen in ages because it totally ditches realism to focus on going fast and looking awesome. If you're a player who's just tired of those slow, tactical grinds, this is basically the polar opposite. It's just straight, unadulterated adrenaline. Plus, the music is a total banger, especially if you dig those driving electronic tracks that make you want to charge through a brick wall. And it's out on PC right now, and honestly, it's worth picking up just to witness those over-the-top kill animations for yourself. So next up, we have Beyond Hanwell. This one serves as a direct follow-up to the original Welcome to Hanwell. At its core, it's a gritty, open-world horror experience that really blends brutal melee combat with this incredibly suffocating atmosphere, which ultimately creates a pretty unique and intense survival challenge. You see, the game just drops you into this massive, ruined city where pretty much every alleyway and building interior feels like a deliberately crafted nightmare, and you're equipped with this dual-wielding system that lets you really get into it with some truly horrifying entities. You'll find yourself weaving through these derelict buildings and foggy streets, all while trying to piece together the mystery of what actually happened here. And the environmental storytelling here is an absolute pleasure, plus it's all mixed in with this deeply unsettling mystery about the city's past and the anomalies that now roam freely through the streets, which easily makes it one of our all-time favorite indie horror titles. The whole idea is to use your environment and whatever blunt objects you can get your hands on for some pretty desperate takedowns, which gives you way more creative control as you fight through hordes of twisted creatures. And you know, dying isn't just a simple reset either. Instead, you'll gradually learn the city's layout and can experiment with stealthier approaches to avoid the bigger threats that are lurking in the shadows. Now, scavenging for scraps is probably one of the more standard activities you'll do, but stumbling upon a hidden basement that hasn't been touched since the collapse is honestly one of the most chilling experiences. Ultimately, there's just a ton of lore and unique encounters scattered across this massive map for you to uncover as you gear up, try to survive, and just knock so many creepy monsters into the dirt. And I mean, it is a lot of monsters that you'll be doing that to.
You ready?
Yes, sir. Ready.
Move! 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 Take it down!
Suspect down!
Right is down!
Coming in next, we have Ready or Not. You know, after spending years in early access, it is now officially launched. Basically, this means all you folks who refuse to touch early access versions can finally dive into this SWAT simulation game. At its core, you're part of a SWAT team getting deployed to bomb threats, house raids, and terrorist takedowns, all set in a city that just seems to be perpetually on fire. There's a full single-player campaign here, plus a variety of really cool multiplayer modes to jump into. You'll run through levels scattered across this incredibly crime-ridden city, and honestly, the levels are just freaking awesome. Like, genuinely some of the most realistic I've seen since Half-Life 2. Each mission is packed with all kinds of fun surprises and optional objectives to discover, and let me tell you, the missions can go sideways really fast if you're not careful. You absolutely have to be methodical, watch your angles, clear every single room, and constantly ID everyone, because if you so much as look at someone sketchy the wrong way or accidentally shoot a civilian, your mission is basically over just like that. Ready or Not can be pretty unforgiving that way. Missions can end abruptly if you accidentally break the rules or the laws, and there are a ton of crazy laws in this fictional world, but despite that, it's still something uniquely exciting to play. It's just a very different type of game experience overall. The levels are really the star of the show here, incredibly detailed and just awesome to explore. The AI and everything surrounding it are really solid too. Plus, there's a good variety with tons of weapons, gear, and utility items to choose from. Ready or Not, we've been waiting on it for a while, but now it's finally out there for everyone to enjoy. Alright, next on the list we've got Fashion Police Squad, and you know, while it sounds like a total joke, it kind of is one. You know, it's genuinely hilarious, but don't let that fool you, because it's also a really creative first-person shooter that's actually built well. I mean it, the creativity here is off the charts, especially since your enemies are just people with zero fashion sense. You're dealing with guys rocking socks with sandals or just wearing the most distasteful, hideous outfits imaginable, right? As the fashion police, your job is to literally take these people down and kill them with kindness, so to speak, but you're doing it using typical FPS mechanics. Your primary tool is this little gadget that fires needles and thread, though there are tons of other wild weapons to find as you play. But instead of just mindlessly taking lives, you're actually doing these people a favor by shredding their ugly shorts or blowing up those socks and essentially entombing them in a much more stylish fit. It's just so fun to play through, and honestly, we've never really seen anything quite like this in the genre before. Usually the most creative thing we see in shooters is just a wacky gun that shoots weird projectiles, you know? But you never really see a game that thinks about guns that actually do good and help people out like this. It's just super unique and fun, and you can really tell the devs put their hearts into it, because most importantly, the actual gameplay feels great. Okay, coming in next, we have Dead Zone Rogue. Now look, even though roguelite shooters have been absolutely flooding the market lately, very few actually manage to nail that jump from 2D logic to a full-on high-stakes first-person perspective like this one does. It's about as pure and unfiltered as a sci-fi rogue can get, you know? You're out here exploring the decaying space station, which is this massive derelict space station filled with randomized corridors and just tons of loot to find. But instead of that typical slow tactical crawl you might expect, Dead Zone Rogue gives you this high-octane movement with air dashes and deep elemental synergies that feel incredibly rewarding to pull off. I mean, it's basically like if the original Quake had a kid with Hades and then just left it in deep space to fend for itself, right? You've got to manually manage your weapon heat and all your ability cooldowns while dodging incoming fire from rogue AI drones and these massive, intimidating bosses. The whole thing is chaotic for sure, but it never really feels too unfair when you mess up. I really dig the gritty, low-poly aesthetics and the heavy lighting that makes everything look like those classic Deus Ex or System Shock-style polygon models. It's kind of the digital adrenaline shot we all need to wake us up on a slow afternoon. It's just a perfect, compact shooter that totally encapsulates everything we love about that one more run mentality. And hey, if this is your first time seeing the game, then you're in luck because it's already out on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. All right, next up we've got Trepang 2. You know, this one is honestly just a total crazy murder fest of a shooter. It's incredibly fast-paced, but I mean, it's not really that old-school boomer shooter vibe. It's more like a classic style that's been cranked up with these absolutely gonzo modern graphics. The thing is just beautiful to look at, or I guess it's ugly beautiful depending on how much you enjoy liquefying enemies with grenades and leaving shotgun bloodstains all over the walls, right? But past all that gore and destruction, there's actually a really solid game here that offers more than just brain-off shooting. You've got these big detailed levels with secrets to hunt down and even some weird ghost stories tucked away, which is honestly way more than you'd expect from a title like this. In a game like this, the shooting has to feel perfect, and they really nailed the technical side of things with the way bullets impact and how enemies react to every hit. I'm telling you, the weapon sounds and the feedback are just top tier, and they aren't messing around at all. If you're looking for a game where you can literally chainsaw a guy in half similar to how you do it in Doom games while enjoying a total RTX on showcase, this one has it in spades. Now next up we have Celico, and man, if you're hunting for a game that punches way above its weight class, this is honestly it. It's actually built on GZ Doom, which is basically ancient tech at this point, right? But you'd seriously never know it because the environmental destruction is just on another level. You're playing as Dawn, a security captain in this massive underground facility, and whenever a firefight breaks out, the entire room just gets absolutely shredded, you know? I mean, glass is flying everywhere, paintings are being knocked off the walls, and enemies are literally losing limbs. It's visceral in a way that even most big-budget AAA titles can't really touch. The AI is actually inspired by fear, so they aren't just standing around like targets, they're constantly flanking you and flushing you out with grenades to make your life a nightmare if you try to stay still. It's definitely more tactical than your average boomer shooter, so you've got to use cover and slide around like a total maniac just to survive. I will say the maps are huge and it's pretty easy to get turned around, but they added these little green lights to help guide you, which is honestly a nice touch. There's even a persistent world feature where if you trash an office, it stays trashed when you come back later. And you can find a pizza box and eat individual slices for health, which is basically the dream, right? Honestly, if you're a newer gamer who thinks retro-style games are just simple, Celico is going to completely change your mind. It's in early access, sure, but there's so much polish here already that it feels like a full release. And coming in next, let's talk about Serious Sam, Siberian Mayhem. You know, for a while there, Serious Sam was thought to be pretty much long dead. It really seemed like the developers just didn't know what to do with him anymore, where to take the series or anything, honestly. But thankfully, they kind of went back to basics with this more straightforward spin-off adventure where you're dropped into a Siberian environment and your main goal is just to shoot a whole bunch of monsters. The gameplay here isn't really breaking any new ground, it's just you as Serious Sam stopping in one open area after another and fighting off tons of enemies using a bunch of different weapons. The movement is fast, the action is solid, and the violence is gloriously over the top. It's classic Serious Sam stuff at its core, but now with some newer enemy types and some interesting new environments to mix things up, you know, going really deep into that Siberian, Russian aesthetic with some urban environments, lots of snow, and then blending that with some of the classic Serious Sam sci-fi elements and creepy monster designs. And honestly, if you're the kind of player who likes games where you just shoot things, run up to grab health, armor, and ammo drops, and keep moving forward, this is definitely a worthy addition to the series. It feels pretty underrated because honestly everybody really just thought Serious Sam was dead and buried, so I think people had kind of written it off, but it's surprisingly solid and well worth your time. Next up on the list is Echo Point Nova, and look, if you've ever spent time with Severed Steel, you already know these developers have a serious need for speed, but this is basically that same energy injected with open world steroids, you know? It's a first-person shooter where you've actually got a hoverboard, so you're essentially surfing across these massive floating structures while picking drones out of the sky. Honestly, the movement is the entire thing here. It's all about maintaining that momentum, using grappling hooks and wall running to the point where you never even have to touch the ground if you're skilled enough. It's got this very specific, clean, lo-fi art style that reminds me of those early 2000s PC titles, but the physics under the hood are way more advanced than anything from back then, right? And to be fair, it can be a bit disorienting at first since you're moving at like Mach 10. But once that flow clicks, you feel like an absolute badass. There's no fall damage either, which is a huge win because you're definitely going to be falling a lot while you're learning the ropes, or the board, I guess. You're out there exploring these huge open environments and taking down massive bosses, and to be real, the scale of some of these encounters is just wild for an indie project. It even features a co-op mode, so you can bring a friend along for the chaos, which I think makes the whole flying through the air thing even more hilarious when you both inevitably slam into a wall. It's just one of those games that focuses purely on the joy of movement, similar to how Titanfall or Tribes used to feel back in the day, you know? If you're a newer gamer who wants to see how creative FPS movement can actually get when it isn't tied down by realism, then this is the one for you. It's out on PC right now, and if you're into high-speed combat that doesn't hold your hand, you've seriously got to check it out. And finally, since I already mentioned Severed Steel from the last game, consider this as a bonus game, and also let's talk about it. Now, this game quietly launched a couple of years ago, and honestly, it was really worth your time then, and still is now. It's more of like an arcade-style FPS game where, you know, you're just shooting guys, shooting things, picking up weapons off of them as you go, you know, blowing up buildings, and just keep moving forward, essentially. It's a little bit more arcadey and a little bit more focused towards a pure gameplay experience without all the fluff. It's not exactly a massive game. It doesn't have this sweeping story or crazy environments to speak of. You're mostly just killing guys in warehouses, right? But the real magic is in the way you kill guys. You have these crazy powers of movement. You could do full flips, you could slide, you could jump, you could spin 360 degrees without breaking a sweat. It's very much something that people call like a bullet time simulator, honestly. It's like the fighting equivalent of a Max Payne bullet dodge in terms of feel. Like, you could just do this completely out of this world flip and then seamlessly transition into shooting a bunch of guys that looks and feels really cool every single time. Severed Steel is underrated for a bunch of reasons, and especially just because of things like this. The movement, the flow, the whole package just doesn't get enough love. But yeah, those are just some of the best FPS games that I feel like most of you didn't know about or haven't played yet. And you know, there are still lots out there, and I will surely be covering this kind of video in the future. So if you want to catch that, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But as always, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.